It's time for the Engaged Club, the podcast for club managers and operators that strive to create loyal and connected members, guests, and customers. Here are the two guys with the club management and digital marketing advice you need to realize your club's potential. Jim Hope and Roger Kincaid.
Welcome to the Engaged Club podcast. I'm Roger Kincaid. I do the marketing, the sales stuff for Off Course Golf, and you can see us online at offcourse.golf.
I'm Jim Hope, and I'm the GM of the Derrick Golf and Winter Club. Mr. Kincaid, how are you, sir?
Fantastic. This has been a really amazing series, your 12 Rules of Club Management. And this is the final episode in that series where we're going to cover off rules number 11 and 12. So go ahead, lay it on us. What's rule number 11?
Rule number 11 is do work plans, not performance reviews. And rule number 12 is do a SNAP analysis every year. And I don't know if you've ever heard of a SNAP analysis, Roger, or any of our listeners have, because I made it up yesterday. So
I was just about to say, SNAP analysis. I do those every month, in fact. But no, but you know what? I'll tell you something. As an employee, there was nothing I dreaded more than the performance review, and I cannot wait to hear your solution to the performance review here in rule number 11.
As an employee, you hated receiving them. As an employer, I hate giving them. I mean, I dread them and will actually avoid them. We do one at our club, and it's pretty generic, and it goes in the employee file, and we can say that we did it. But it has no purpose for changing habits, changing behaviors, setting goals, doing anything that other than to be able to identify what you think someone's strengths are and what their weaknesses are and put them down on a piece of paper. And nobody enjoys receiving them. And I can tell you with both employers in talking with boards who have to do it with me and other GMs who have to do it with their teams, and nobody likes giving them either. So in conversation with a friend who was a club manager as well over Christmas, we were talking about this. And actually, I was sitting down with my pal John Fisher, who's a friend of yours as well, and telling John we were doing the 12 rules of club management and getting some ideas from John on what some of those 12 rules were. And we came up with the idea, or he gave me the idea of work plans instead of performance reviews, rule number 11. And it's something that he was doing at his last club. And it came from the corporate world through one of his directors, which is what they did in their business, was they did annual work plans with their people, which in essence became a performance review because there was goals that were set with it. And you were able to sit down on a quarterly basis and review where they were with regards to those goals. And then you would do a formal review on an annual basis. But was it interesting when I worked through this with John, because I was looking for a different way to do things at our club, because I really do hate the performance reviews. And I've got documents that a document that my board uses on me, I got 25 years ago in the business. I think it's still relevant, but we do balanced scorecards. You can do, the keep doing, stop doing, start doing. You can, there's all sorts of different templates you can use for these. But at the end of the day, what you're telling someone and what you're talking to somebody about is the exact same thing. So I thought, well, how do I get a better result? How do you get better buy-in from the people that you're doing the reviews with? And came up with the idea of doing work plans instead. And the intent of these work plans would be that, they would tie in with the club's strategic plan, with the mission and vision. So you would have the mission and vision of the club detailed in the work plan so that the people know that everything that's going to come below this is going to tie in with the mission and with the vision. So there is an overriding principle that's in play, which is supporting the mission and the vision of the club, which also helps keep the strat plan alive at the club, which is a challenge. That's a pod all by itself on how do you keep your strat plan alive and well and not collecting dust on a shelf, which happens far too often. So this work plan would tie in with the club strat plan. It would tie in also with the culture of your club as well. If you have a culture statement or culture support statement, like we have at our club, we have our Let's program. So anything that we would do in our work plans will tie in with the Let's program. We have our own vision, staff vision and mission statement, which is, be the difference is our mission statement for our teams, and our vision statement is to elevate the experience. And then we have a Let's program which support that. So whatever we do with our work plans will also support our culture statement, our internal culture statement for our team. I think you could also incorporate into that what any of the president's objectives were. A lot of clubs, the president of the club may come in with a mandate, may be a little strong, maybe not at some clubs, but they'll come in with some of their own ideas and some of the things that they would like to see happen at the club. And I think as a club manager, it's worthwhile having that conversation with them to make sure that you know what those are, and maybe you need to incorporate that in different departments in areas that the president and you assume that that's coming from the board as a whole would like to see improved in the club from an operations standpoint. And then you chat with the person whose work plan you're doing and say, what are your personal goals? What are your goals for the club? Both personally, maybe growth goals for you. What are goals that you'd like to see at the club obtain that you might want to see the club change? And what would you like to see for your team? So, with that, you can sit down and maybe create 1 or 2, possibly 3 at the most, goals in different areas of the club. Maybe they're personal growth goals, maybe they're team goals, and maybe they are club goals as a whole. Recognizing that, as you know, 75 to 80% of the day is just the minutia of what you do in your job. And if you create, too many, and I think 5 is probably the maximum total number that you want to create. I think there's been studies that have shown that anything over 5, and I've actually heard anything over 3, you won't accomplish any of them because you'll just feel lost. That old analogy, you lose sight of the trees for the forest. So I think if you can maybe keep it to 3 to 5 goals total, that's accomplishable, especially with the minutia of what they do for the day. Create those goals, make them specific, have SMART goals, obviously make them specific, review them on a quarterly basis with whoever you've done them with. Maybe you do them every 3 months or every 4 months instead. And then you do a real big formal annual review, but you really, there's no surprises in that because you've been looking at these as you go along. So, you have an opportunity in those to change behavior. You have an opportunity to change habits. You have an opportunity to change results. The same things you may be looking for when you do a performance review, but you're doing it in a much more strategic way, and you're doing it with much more input with the person on the other side of the table. And I think you're going to get more buy-in as well. And at the end of the day, you're going to get better results, which is what you're after in all of this.
Yeah. Can I pile in here, Jim? Because this is such an important, aspect, I think, of really operating any business or even just trying to execute on a vision, right? But, a goal without a process, we call that a dream. Okay. And if you have a dream and you add a process to it, now we're on a track to get something done. If you don't achieve a goal, it's so hard for us not to take that personally, but you've got to recognize that a failure to achieve a goal it's not a reflection on you, it's a reflection on your process. And this is why I hated performance reviews so much. It's because we fixate on the outcome, when what we should have done all along was take the table out from between the two of us, right? Me, the employee, and the manager that I'm working for, is just remove the table from the conversation, recognize that we're both on the same side because we're both dependent on having a positive outcome here, and saying, let's build a process that we believe will get us where we want it to get us to. And when we do that quarterly update, we do that, that midterm review or whatever it's going to be, we can just sort of say, like, are we being true to the process? Are we doing A, B, C, and D like we said we would? And if we're not, then we know we need to do it. But if we are, then we can say, great, we're succeeding. We are sticking with the process that's supposed to build us towards the goal. And then if at the end of the year we didn't hit the goal, but we did the process, then we know where the problem was and we can update the process. We've got a starting point and we're still collaborating. But I think the first thing that we got to do is recognize that it's all about the process, and let's take the table out of here and be on the same side of the equation. I'm
going to steal that from you, getting the table out from between the two of us. Heck, that's brilliant, Roger, because it almost does become adversarial, right? This performance review. And the one I really love? I really love it when the performance review is tied in with the bonus. Somebody's got a bonus and it's tied in with the performance review. And anyways, why don't we save that for a whole another podcast?
Absolutely.
If you're going to do performance reviews and you're going to do bonuses, let's talk about how bonuses should be, how the payout and the review of a bonus payout should be structured. Let's save that for another podcast, because that's a bone of contention I've had for 30 years in this business. So, but thank you for your insight. You're spot on with all of that.
Let's hit rule number 12 here, buddy.
Rule number 12, the last one of the 12 rules of club management. And by the way, Roger, this has been a hoot doing this. It's been a real learning experience for me, because you can come up with the title, but then you've got to do some research as to the content of it as well. So for me, this has been learning about 12 things as well. So I'm really excited about that. And the 12th rule is do a SNAP analysis every year. Or you could call it review your core competencies every year. But I like the idea of doing the SNAP analysis. And the SNAP came from looking at doing a SWOT. I said, should you do a personal SWOT analysis, which businesses do all the times during the strategic planning process, when they look at their strengths and their weaknesses and their opportunities and their threats. And I thought, well, what should you do on a personal level, on on a club professional level. And I thought do a SNAP analysis, which would be on an annual basis, and we are at the beginning of the year, sit down and review your strengths. What are the strengths that I have? What are Jim Hope's strengths? What are Roger Kincaid's strengths? And what do you bring to the table for both your team and in the club environment for your members and for your board? And to a certain extent, what do you bring for your suppliers as well? Because I think we often forget suppliers in all of this, that they need to become part of the constituents of our club. And then do a needs analysis. So the N in SNAP. Anytime you work with an executive coach, one of the first things you're going to do, and Kevin McDonald, who's a name that is going to be well known to the listeners of this podcast, one of the first things Kevin does with you is a needs analysis. And he gives you a list of about 90 different needs that somebody might have. And he narrows it down to where you'll get to 5 needs. And when you look at that 5 needs, when he's all done, you look and you go, I have to get something of that every single day. And it's interesting what happens to you at the end of the day when you don't get those needs met and what happens to you when you do. So understand what your needs are and figure out how you can get those needs met. The A is attributes. Don't be afraid to sit back and think, what are the attributes? What are the things that I have that are unique to me that I think are unique to my club, that make me different from everybody else? And how do I want to implement those attributes? How do they support what I do at the club? How do they support me as a GM or as a head golf professional, as an F&B manager, as a chef, or whatever role that I have as a club? And then the last one is passions. P is for passions. I think every year you need to reinforce what your passions are and make sure that you know you're getting those. Make sure that you're doing something that is going to support what those passions are. And for me, it was this year, I'm a runner. I like running. I'm not running as much as I can. I signed up for the MEC, which is the Mountain Equipment Co-op, which is I don't know if they're a Canadian company, but certainly in Western Canada. And I signed up for 8 10Ks. Now I'm going to end up running about 4 of those, but I paid for all 8 of them. So I've now got a motivation to train and to run those 10Ks, and they're in my calendar for the whole year. So I made sure that I did something that's going to support the passions that I have. So I think it's just really important to focus on that SNAP analysis, to do that every year. And I think what that does then is it allows you to focus on the areas that are important to you, and it allows you to focus on the areas that you may need to spend a little bit more time on. And I think that that's going to make you a better person. It'll make you a better husband, a better dad, and it'll certainly make you a club manager. And it'll give you some focus, as we talked about in an earlier podcast about the difference between work plans and performance reviews. It's almost you doing a personal work plan is what it is for you. And I think one of the things you can incorporate in with that as well, as we talked about this in a previous pod, is there something happening in your club that you're going to need to help or improve in some expertise in? An example, if you're about to do an articles review of your club, and you know that's going to be a big deal, and you're getting some legal help involved with that. Well, maybe that and it's not a strength of yours, but you may want to make that a strength. You may want to spend more time understanding the legalities of the articles and how they tie in with at your club and with other clubs. So by doing that SNAP analysis, I think it supports what you do well. I think you come out of that feeling good about who you are. It makes you reaffirm what your passions are, and then it'll also figure out what your needs are and make you a better manager and better husband, better dad, just a better person.
Right. And, going back to a prior rule here in Jim's 12 Rules of Club Management, tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And particularly when it comes to the A in SNAP, when you're talking about your attributes, what you're good at, this is not braggadocio. This is you highlighting what you uniquely bring to your position and to your members and to your club. And so if you just happen to be the best, F&B oriented club manager in the game, because you have this sort of culinary background or this pat or whatever those attributes may be, like write that down and just reconcile that with yourself, that you and only you bring that to the table. You're not bragging. You're just talking about what makes you different and maybe in some cases ideal.
Yeah, interesting, Roger. Over the period of the last week, we've been doing interviews. Kathy Francis, who's our recreation manager, retired after 20 years, and she is an absolutely brilliant recreation manager, but more importantly, she's one of the best human beings that I've ever met. And so I had done a series of interviews over the week for candidates for her position. And someone I talked to on Friday said to me, I said, do you have any questions of me? This was after a 3-hour interview. We just had this wonderful conversation for there. She said, what would your team say about you as a leader? And it stopped me in my tracks. And I listed off all these things that I would hope that they'd say, that I'm supportive, but I challenge them, and I'm a goal setter, and I bring energy, and I've got enthusiasm, and I'm fun to be around, and all that stuff. And I finished it all. And I looked at this person. And I said, I really hope they would say that of me, because I think that's the leader that I am, but I'm not sure that it is. And so what it supported me when I was thinking about this SNAP analysis is that this SNAP would make me think about that. And it would also allow me to think that one of my attributes is this is me as a leader, but then I'd have to put some thought to, is that really me as a leader? And if it isn't, what changes, what things do I have to do differently to become the leader that I want to be? So that was just a real life example of what happened to me on Friday that I think the SNAP analysis will help me solve.
Brilliant. So give it to me again. Rule number 11.
Work plans, not performance reviews, and do a SNAP analysis every year.
All right, Jim, that wraps it up. The 12 Rules of Club Management, courtesy of Jim Hope. Thanks so much for listening. And, share these podcasts and go to theengagedclub.com, where you'll be able to see all 6 of these episodes that outline all 12 rules put together in a toolkit format. So you'll be able to reference them, bookmark that page, reference them anytime you want, and share them with other colleagues that you have in the club business. Until next time, thanks for listening.
This has been the Engaged Club podcast with Jim Hope and Roger Kincaid. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. If you like what you heard, share it with your fellow club managers and operators. Until next time, thanks for listening.